What comes to mind when you hear the numbers 996? Personally, I imagine incredible steering feel, a lightweight, delicate chassis, and sonorous flat six noises. Some people, however, will tell you about IMS, RMS, and bore score. The scare stories around the 996 have kept values low, meaning now you can access 911 magic for M3 money. We're big fans of the platform here at Shooting Brake, and today we're going to cut through the noise and tell you what you really need to be looking out for on a used example. Before we get into it, let's just do a brief history lesson. From the 911's introduction in 1963 through to the 993's withdrawal in 1997, the Porsche 911 had remained largely unchanged. You had a 2-valve per cylinder air-cooled flat six slung at the back and a basic shell that hadn't really changed in 35 years. And so along came the 996. Lighter, faster, cleaner and safer, it was the first all-new 911 since the original, and it came with some radical changes. The shell was sleeker, longer and smoother and housed new headlights that were no longer round, instead flowing with the bodywork of the car and integrating indicators which now sat inboard just like the original 911. Launched as a rear-wheel drive only Carrera in 1997, the new 996 achieved immediate critical acclaim. Eva magazine named it the car of the year, beating off the Ferrari 355 and the Lotus Elise. It was the lightest 911 since the G-body of the 80s, and it had more power than the 993 Carrera RS. The redesigned shell brought renewed dynamics and driver focus. The 996 went on to become a total sales success with 175,000 examples sold, figures which are often heralded to have saved Porsche's finances at the time. So how did the 996 become the cheapest generation of 911? Well, a look back through history reveals that at any given point there's always been an unfairly maligned generation of 911. In the 1990s, it was a 3-litre SC. In the 2000s, it was a 964, and now it's a 996. The fact is, car values are relative, and strong residuals for one model are often reliant on juxtaposition against another. So if you're smart enough to want a 996 today, here's what you need to look out for. A quick Google of common 996 issues will mainly bring up the M96 engine, so let's start with that. There's 5 main issues to keep a note of. Some of them are overstated and some of them are understated. First off, IMS. The IMS is an intermediate shaft behind the flywheel used as part of the engine's timing equipment. It's a sealed ball bearing, and after a few years, some owners reported failure of that bearing, often leading to valve and piston contact. The failure rate is estimated at about 10%, with the majority of failures happening on low mileage later cars. The theory is that the lack of use leaves the bearing lubricant to dry out, eventually leading to total failure. Cars up to 1999 have a dual row bearing, which is fairly trouble-free. Later cars have a single row, which has a higher failure rate. The IMS can be accessed with relative ease during a clutch change, and an aftermarket solution can be purchased from £500. IMS issues really shouldn't put you off a 996. Specialists today report failures being fairly rare, and total replacement of the IMS is relatively easy, similar to rod bearings on an M car. Cars in regular use are unlikely to see IMS issues, and my car remains on its original at 122,000 miles. Overall, IMS issues are arguably overstated, both to their failure rates and their replacement costs. Next up, we've got bore score. Bore score is piston on cylinder contact caused by poor lubrication or warm-up procedures. It can lead to piston slap, heavy oil usage, and debris in the oil system. There's no fix other than a full engine rebuild. Whilst that may sound scary, bore score on the 996 is actually fairly rare. Its notoriety came about on the 997 Carrera S engine, which was a 3.8, which then put greater attention on older cars as well. The early 3.4s such as this one rarely see bore score, while the later 3.6s are a touch more vulnerable, but the overall failure rate is still in the single-digit percentage points. When viewing a 996, make sure to see it from cold. Get the seller to start it up while you stand at the rear and listen out for excessive rattling or knocking, along with smoke from the left-hand side exhaust, or both if the car has an aftermarket X-pipe exhaust. Bore score tends to hit cylinder 6 first and is generally caused by poor warm-up and service discipline, leading to improper cylinder lubrication. You can also get a pre-purchase inspection with a bore scope, which can provide an actual picture of the bores. Don't expect clean bores, however, as some scoring is normal with any internal combustion engine, and concerning wear should only be scoring that you'd be able to feel with your fingernail. Overall, bore score is still a significantly overstated issue on the 996 platform. There's a huge amount of 996s still on the road in regular use, the vast majority of which have never had a rebuild and will never need one. If your car is symptom-free, you service it regularly, and you warm it up diligently before using all the revs, you'll be fine. Next up, we've got heads and cooling, which are an Achilles heel of the 996 that isn't often spoken about. 996s can suffer with cracked cylinder heads, leading to overheating and oil coolant intermix. To check for this, look out for condensation cream on the coolant reservoir cap. Don't be alarmed if you find this on an oil cap. The design of the remote filler neck means condensation often forms here. Coolant intermix can sometimes be caused by a failed oil cooler, which, if caught early, has no further consequences. Cracked heads, however, are fairly painful. When test driving the car, make sure you get up to temperature and check it doesn't overheat. Also keep an eye out for significant white smoke out the exhaust, which implies coolant is entering the combustion chamber. Cracked heads are thankfully rare, but not unheard of. Do also keep an eye out for the rest of the cooling system on the car. The radiators and aircon condensers are quite vulnerable sitting in the front bumper, and they often pick up mulch, which leads to corrosion. This doesn't cause an issue straight away, but it does mean that any stone chips can go straight through the radiators. Don't ask me how I know. Many 996s are still on their original radiators, which by now will be brittle and weak, making them vulnerable to holing. When 996s are up to temp, the radiator fans should come on. You can hear them and feel them by going down into the front wheel arches. Failure is often due to resistor packs, which are easily replaceable. Chain guides can also be problematic. There's two main ones to keep an eye on. The VariCam variable cam timing system uses movable chain guides to adjust timing, and these sliders wear out as a matter of course. Replacing them means dropping the engine, but it's not the worst job in the world. Look out for a brief, fast-sounding rattle on startup. If you get a PPI, make sure they check for cam deviation, which should be no more than 6 degrees. Anything more means the VariCam sliders need immediate replacing, which should be accounted for in the purchase price. Failure of the main guides is thankfully very rare, as replacement requires splitting of the engine block. These are the main big issues for the M96 engine, but there's plenty of small ones as well. Slow starting can be a sign that the Y cable is failing, a fairly annoying issue but not a big deal for any specialist. Aftermarket exhausts are fairly common and very desirable. If your 996 is still on its original exhaust, do keep note that the original manifold studs can often seize in the head after picking up 25 years worth of road grime. Beyond this, the fifth major issue for the M96 engine is the rear main oil seal, or RMS. RMS leaks are common on the 996, leading to an oil leak from the bell housing. Most 996s have some form of RMS leak, but some basic misting shouldn't be concerning. Dripping leading to oil stains on the floor should trigger replacement. Most competent garages will replace the RMS when doing a clutch change, and RMS leaks are by no means a showstopper, but they can be used as a basic negotiation point at purchase. Beyond this, excessive blue smoke from the exhaust can often be the air oil separator, which is a maintenance item on the 996. Moving on, we've got the gearbox, which is generally fairly trouble-free. Keep an eye out for whiny bearings and make sure it doesn't pop out of gear under acceleration, as that can often necessitate a full gearbox rebuild. However, that's thankfully very, very rare. 996.1 Autos uses a ZF 5-speed gearbox similar to that used in BMW's E46, which isn't the strongest of boxes. 996.2s and turbos use the Mercedes 722.6 box, which is extremely stout, shared with the E55 AMG. That's it for the drivetrain. Lots of scary phrases and acronyms, but 996 drivetrain issues are fairly overstated. The majority of the cars run fine and will continue to run fine as long as they're maintained correctly. However, what's understated are the smaller issues that present in these cars, starting with the interior. First things first, you want to look out for condensation on the inside of the windows, and then when you get into the car, you need to give it a little sniff. Unfortunately, 996s suffer from water ingress issues due to poor quality sunroof drains, battery drains, and door membranes. As a result, the carpets can often take on water, which then waterlogs the alarm system, which can make the car fully immobilized. The gold standard on checking this is to lift up the carpet behind the rear seats and give the sponge a squeeze. It should be completely dry. However, if it is soaked, you will need to take the carpets out and hang them up to dry and sort out any water ingress as soon as possible. Look out for replaced door membranes and clear drains in any recent garage invoices. Speaking of alarms, check that both keys are present, as new ones are only codable by Porsche and will sting you for £500 all in. Keys have a limited life cycle and will eventually run out of clicks. Non-start issues can be caused by faulty ignition switches, which is cheap and easy fix, and like all cars, window regulator cables can eventually fail. Make sure they go all the way up and all the way down without any crunches, and make sure they drop up and down when you open the doors. 996 trims are generally fairly weak and brittle. Look out for broken vent slats in particular. The foam backing of the central HVAC system often breaks down with age, leading to chunks flying out. Fixing this is a dash out job, but it's fairly easy to live with. Moving on, we've got suspension. The 996 is blessed with an absolutely brilliant chassis, possibly one of the best road car chassis ever made. It has an amazing balance between comfort and body control, and it achieves that through very soft bushings in the lower control arms and suspension. As a result, the coffin arms, diagonal supports and drop links are basically consumable maintenance items to replace at max every 2 years. If they're left longer, the steel bolts can often seize into the aluminium bushing supports, leading to suspension needing to be cut out. A suspension refresh within the last 2 years is definitely worth paying a premium for. Brakes are real high watermark for the 996. They're massively over-spec'd and the consumables are surprisingly cheap. Those gorgeous Brembo calipers, however, have one Achilles heel, which is the bleed nipple. If it's left for too long, it can often seize or strip in the head. Budget for this on any car that hasn't had a brake fluid change within the last 2 years. In terms of issues to look out for, that's really about it. It's not an insignificant list, but many of these issues are common on other performance cars of this age, and considering a 996 offers Ferrari rivaling performance for M3 money, it's really not a bad deal. I would budget about 2 to 3k a year to keep a 996 in good fettle on the road, a low price to pay for such a special driving experience. If you're looking to buy a 996, you'll need to whittle down exactly which one you want, as the range is fairly confusing. The 996 was launched as a rear-wheel drive Carrera, offered in coupe or convertible, and a 6-speed manual or 5-speed ZF auto. Early cars had cable throttles, orange indicators as standard, and were available with limited slip differentials. In 1999, the Carrera 4 was launched with 4-wheel drive, and in 2000, all Carreras switched to a drive-by-wire throttle and were offered with PSM, a sophisticated stability control system. Limited slip diffs were no longer available. The Turbo and GT models were also launched, which is best discussed in another video. In 2002, the 996 was facelifted with turbo headlights, a 3.6 engine for the Carrera model, and updated bumpers front and rear. Known as the 996.2, 2 further models were subsequently released, the Targa with a sliding glass roof and the Carrera 4S. The 4S has a turbo wide body, brakes, suspension, but retains a standard 3.6 Carrera engine. The combination of the 4S's light bar, wide hips, lack of turbo spoiler and lack of air scoops lead many to call it the best looking 911 ever. This is of course subjective, but it's very much reflected in those cars' values, which compete with the lower end of the turbo market. The nature of buyer's guides means highlighting the car's ugly side for 10 solid minutes. The 996, however, even with all that said, is a veritable bargain, and it's not going to stay like that forever. This is going to follow the same trend as the 964 and the 3-litre SC. The major issues are far overstated, however the minor issues such as interior, suspension and general running costs are likely understated. 996s in my opinion offer a 40 grand driving experience for half that outlay, but the same goes for the running costs. They're a huge amount of car for the money, and in my opinion they're completely, totally and utterly iconic. A radical, bold, expressive 911 for the radical, bold and expressive late 90s. I'm completely in love with mine and I would recommend one to anyone looking for a genuinely brilliant, usable, all boxes ticked sports car. Now I could go on forever about how good 996s are, but I'll save that for a proper review another time. In the meantime, if you're looking to buy or sell your next dream car, be it a Porsche or otherwise, make sure to check out shootingbrake.com, the auction platform run by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. My name's Ghaleb, thanks for watching and make sure you subscribe for future content.